Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Next. I am your host, Mike Walker, and today we're going to dive into innovations in the state of Wyoming. You might be asking yourself, Mike, why Wyoming? What's up with that? Well, we're going to be talking with Stevin Lupien, and he is the CEO of BeefChain, a blockchain enabled solution that helps farmers uh, essentially track and trace goods to the end supplier. And it's going to provide all sorts of rich benefits for small businesses to help make them much more successful, keep these farmers in business, which is a very, very critical issue right now. So, as you can see, we're going to be talking a lot about the business innovation that's going to be required to leverage this technology. And with that, we're going to talk about some of the hard dependencies. And this is where Wyoming comes in, where the folks in Wyoming are uniquely positioned with over 20 blockchain laws that have been passed by the state legislation to help enable these types of businesses to build these types of solutions. So we're going to get into topics like that. We're going to talk about all sorts of different stuff. I think it's going to be a good episode. I think you're going to enjoy it, but I don't want to spoil too much. Now, like always, we're going to provide all the show notes and links on our website, vnextpod.com. And that link should be right up here, right there. So go there, check it out, provide some feedback. You can ask to be a guest on the show there. You can say what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show, all that good stuff. Go check it out. And also make sure that, you like and subscribe and all that good stuff as well. So with that, let's just get into it.
How are you, Mike? Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm so happy that you decided to join us here and share some of your insights. Now you're a busy guy. You're involved in lots of different activities, both from running a business, being integrated into the university structure, helping to create standards for things like blockchain. But I don't want to steal too much of your thunder. Stephen, maybe if you could help walk us through, tell us a little bit more about you, what your current role is, or should I say roles are, and yeah, kind of walk us through it.
Well, I'm currently the president and CEO of an agriculture company called the BeefChain, and what we do is we provide USDA certification for ranchers, and we use blockchain as our method of validating the information. I don't like to say it's a blockchain company because I think we're using blockchain to solve a very real problem that ranchers have. But I consider us an agriculture business, and I'm also presently an adjunct professor at the University of Wyoming, where I'm teaching blockchain as part of the College of Business. And I am also working with the university. We'll probably have a big announcement in the next week or two. So I'll certainly, Mike, let you know when that announcement is ready. But we are in the process of standing up a center of excellence at the University of Wyoming. And because Wyoming has done so many unique things in this space, the university absolutely sees that there's an opportunity for the university to further what the state legislature has been doing. So it's been a busy time in Wyoming in this space, and it's just been such an honor and been so exciting to be a part of it.
Wow, yeah, that sounds like a lot, and but the first obvious question that I have for you, though, is with your company Beef Chain, is
Mhm.
the overall mission statement to really help people find where's the beef?
In a way,
And keep in mind, that was a
it's
cheesy 80s commercial reference for those that don't know. So you'll find that, yeah,
that
I'm
was
going to go
actually
back
a
in the memory banks a little bit here.
calling where's the beef and then referring it to as cheesy, I think is kind of a pun within a pun.
Right.
And
We just broke down some walls here.
now what the mission of BeefChain is really, we want to connect the rancher to the consumer as much as we possibly can, and in doing so, and with working with ranchers on this project, the one thing we've really learned is that intermediaries have really taken a lot of the power and, quite honestly, the profit out of the ranching business. The cost of beef has steadily gone up for us as consumers over the last 20 years, but the price per pound that ranchers are being paid is essentially unchanged. There are a number of articles that I encourage people to go out and Google, Google beef prices, and you'll see there's a lot going on right now in particular, and that's purely coincidental, that ranchers are kind of reaching a point where they're saying enough. We can't keep being the one that bear the brunt of this. So what BeefChain does is really two things. One is we are the first company certified under the USDA's PVP program, which is their process verified program, that is using blockchain as the proof vehicle. Most of the other, or essentially all the other PVP providers are using either simple databases, which we all know the challenges with that, or quite frankly, some of them are just using ledgers, handwritten ledgers.
Right.
So we saw an opportunity to use blockchain for a very particular purpose, and that is to verify that that the ranchers are actually being paid for what they're claiming that their product is. And under the USDA PVP program, there are hormone-free programs. There's grass-fed programs. There's a program called Wyoming Plus, which is specific to ranchers in Wyoming. And ranchers who can prove that they're raising their product under these standards do and should get a better price at the sale barn. And that's really what it's about. How do ranchers who put more time and effort into creating a safer and a more quality product, how do they get the benefit of that? And one of the challenges we saw was that in virtually all cases, no matter how the product is raised, when it goes to the sale barn, it's almost sold like a commodity.
Right.
And all the effort that ranchers put in kind of gets lost in the sale barn process. So that was one thing we did. The other thing that we're working on, and we're doing that in cooperation with a company called IOHK, and IOHK has a chain that we're using, and they've been absolutely wonderful in working with us. We want to also connect consumers directly to ranchers. We believe that in this day and age, in particular, people want to know where their food comes from. People want to know, that their food is safe. They want to know how their food is raised, and I think Wyoming ranchers in particular have a story to tell. These are many cases are multi-generational ranches, and these are people I think when consumers see who raised their product, where their product was raised, that awareness is only going to help both the rancher and the consumer. So those are the two things that we're doing at BeefChain right now.
Wow. And so oftentimes whenever we talk about these types of solutions, we oftentimes focus just on the technology and how
Mm.
great, blockchain is or some other type of technology that's enabling it. And what I really, really like about your response is that you said, look, there's some very real business problems here. We've got, ranchers that are being disenfranchised. There's the supply chain doesn't have spread the wealth more democratically, and what you're helping to solve is helping frankly keep these folks in business, and so it's actually solving a very, very real problem. But also another thing that I think is really cool that you highlighted on is the fact that consumer privacy, or not privacy, consumer trust has dwindled away over the years in kind of how food is labeled, because it is a bit of a mystery to the average consumer at the average grocery store and looking at a label and going, what the heck does this mean? And can I even trust this label? Because there's so many
Mhm.
different permutations and exceptions, etc. And what you're doing is you're saying, look, why do we need to have this kind of barrier between the consumer and where their food comes from? Let's break that down and let's allow the consumer to actually directly tap in and I don't know what technology you use, but let's just say a QR code or a barcode, scan it on their phone, and then be able to see, oh yeah, this came from uh, Joe's Ranch in Cheyenne, Wyoming. He's got a 5-star rating, and here's his history. Click on this. You can go to the website and you can see their process on how they handle meat, why they're certified, how they become certified. Uh, Maybe visit the ranch if you really want to. That part's really, really fascinating and cool to me because it's material. It means something to the person that's actually using this technology. Am I getting that right, or am I way off the
No,
mark?
you've really described our business plan almost perfectly. We are using QR code, and in a restaurant setting, you can have a table tent or a QR code on a menu, and you can scan it, and you can see exactly where that restaurant is getting their product. And we can actually show the entire supply chain. Here's where the product began. Here's when it was initially tagged, because in the cattle business you tag them all on the kind of the same day after all your calves have dropped, and so there's that's when the tagging begins. You can see where the cow has traveled throughout its lifespan, when it was processed, how it's traveled through the supply chain, and when it got to your restaurant. And the same thing, obviously, with consumers on a packages as well too. And because interestingly, there are some products that I think consumers have a lot of trust in because they know a lot about the product.
Right.
Oddly enough, most people, when they buy their beef, they go to their grocery store, and the only thing they really choose based on is what it's USDA graded. Is it prime? Is it choice? Or is it select?
Right.
Other than that, you virtually know nothing about the beef product that you're buying, especially if it's a grocery store brand, because they put their own, Publix or Red Lion or something like that, sticker on it, and you have absolutely no idea, where that steak came from, how it was raised. In many food categories, organic means very different things,
Right.
and there's really not a national standard. So you may see something on a package that says organic. Well, what does that mean? So I think there's a real opportunity for us in beef in particular, although we have worked with sheep producers, and we can work with any number of other producers. However, we want to concentrate on right now what we know best. And but there's a real void in our beef supply right now of really knowing where it came from and how it was raised. And we live in a world where this device should be able to tell us a lot. And quite honestly, we're becoming, consumers that, understand the value of using a cell phone to get information. And why that hasn't happened yet in the beef business astonished us. And that was the void that we saw. And, that, and I do want to stress, we're doing this because we really want to help the ranching community. Most of the owners of my company are ranchers, and that's why we started the company. And if ranching in the U.S. goes away, we've got a real challenge with our food supply, because now we'll be bringing in products from abroad where, quite frankly, we'll even have less information.
Right.
So we really want to make this about the ranching community, and that linkage between the ranching community and the consumer.
Yeah, and isn't as far as livestock is concerned, and again, I'm not an expert in this space, uh, isn't, a lot of the other animals, like pigs and such. A lot of that comes from overseas. Like, I think pigs, especially, is China. There's a lot of South American stuff for
Mm-hmm.
poultry, etc. But beef is still largely, insourced for the U.S. Is that accurate?
It is.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And and interestingly, if the U.S. also does a pretty good job of exporting our beef products. So there's a real opportunity there for the rest of the world. There are a number of countries that we've worked with, South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan, where quite frankly the American story helps sell the beef.
Right.
They really do view Wyoming as kind of this mystical old west place, and
Right.
and by the way, it is. I want to, having moved here from New York City, I have to tell you, Wyoming is an absolutely magical place. But they really value that story. And so the more that we can, for our ranchers who are exporting product, the more that we can tell that story. A great example is a relatively famous ranch that we work with here in Wyoming called the Camp Stool Ranch. It's owned by a gentleman named Ogden Driscoll. Ogden Driscoll is the sixth generation rancher, and there's two more generations on that ranch right now behind him. So there's 8 generations on the Camp Stool Ranch. The interesting thing about the Camp Stool Ranch also is it surrounds the base of Devil's Tower. So, if you can imagine, there's, if you look on our beefchain.io website, you'll see a lot of pictures around Camp Stool Ranch. And I get people all the time saying to me, well, you Photoshop that. You're clearly took a Wyoming landmark and you're putting cows in front of it and you just Photoshop that. And I'm like, no, no, we didn't. That is that is the Driscoll Ranch
This is what I go to
and
work every
or
day
Camp Store
for,
Ranch.
right?
Can you imagine that?
Well, I tell you,
The
you're
only
making me really
drawback to work.
jealous. But you know what? We're all remote now, and we don't have to go into any office. I was a remote worker anyways. Heck, maybe I should be looking at a relocation to Wyoming at this point. Sounds like the best place
Bring
to
a
be
very
isolated.
heavy coat. Okay, that's all I'm. The only advice I'll give you with being a new transplant is bring a very heavy coat when you visit Wyoming. No, it's that part of the state in particular, which is the northeastern part of the state, is truly a beautiful place, and it is sparsely populated and relatively untouched. And if you have an opportunity to visit that part of the state, certainly visit the Camp Stool Ranch. But it is truly a beautiful part of the state. And other than the 50 weeks of winter, it is a. I'm kidding, guys. Up there, I'm kidding. It is.
Oh, the Wyoming tourist department is going to be all over you for that one.
No, it truly is, and I am saying this sincerely. It is a magical place. I could not be happier with my move out here to Cheyenne. Prior to that, I was living in southern Connecticut and commuting into New York City, and coming out here, you would think it was a culture shock, but quite frankly, Wyoming is its people, and this is just a wonderful place with wonderful people. And so I do encourage anyone who's out in this part of the country to come visit. It's truly a beautiful place, and hopefully we'll have University of Wyoming football games that they can visit, but that's yet to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely see about that. Frankly, I'm not holding my breath too much, but I guess it's what's the phrase? Hope for the best, expect the worst, or something along those lines. But so I'm totally grokking and really loving what you're saying about this whole beef chain thing because I spent some time in Texas, and probably like Wyoming, the Texans, they love their beef, and
Yep. And
I
they know a
definitely.
thing about cows. Yeah.
Right, and I tell you, I definitely picked up the a lot of beef habits living in Austin, Texas. I've got a nice smoker where I'm smoking brisket all the time, and all sorts of stuff, ribs and all that great stuff. But I can tell you, would be interesting to hear from you about in that context is there's a lot more when it comes to these kind of box delivery, direct from farm to consumer type of thing.
Mhm.
And would be interesting because I know that I would be all over because I'm even here locally where I'm at. There's a few local butchers that I'll go to support the community, etc. But also to supplement that and throw in the freezer and what have you is like I think a butcher box is what I use. But I'll have
Mhm.
meat come in and pop in the freezer, and then when I'm ready to have some people over and cook some brisket all day long, we can do that or what have you. But with beef chain, it seems to me, at least at a high level of understanding, we didn't have a conversation before this about this, but it almost would make it easier, I think, to be able to enable more of that, to have local Wyoming ranchers to be able to take their product and go direct to consumer and be able to create like their own type of butcher box, or even have a network like a marketplace that is all about connecting the ranchers to the consumers. What are your thoughts there?
Well, first of all, that's the ultimate goal. The challenge is there is some regulatory hurdles that ranchers face when wanting to do a direct-to-consumer type of program. There are USDA regulations about where beef can get processed, and where it gets processed, has to be inspected by the USDA, and there are certainly costs associated with that. That makes it very, very difficult for small ranchers and individual butchers to do large scale operations, because once they grow beyond a certain point, the USDA regulations kick in and the costs become so prohibitive that they simply they hit a ceiling and they can't grow past that. Wyoming has taken a little bit of a step, and this has nothing to do with the blockchain legislation, but Wyoming also has something called the Food Freedom Act, and many states actually regulate. And you have to get a license in order to produce certain food products and sell them to consumers. And in many states, the amount that you can sell in value is relatively low, sometimes less than $1,000. So if you have grandma's great jam recipe and you want to start grandma's jam company in your kitchen, in many cases you can't, because once you produce above a certain level, then you fall under a whole different set of regulations where quite frankly it'll be cost prohibitive for you to produce it yourself. And Wyoming has actually taken some steps with the Food Freedom Act, and I would certainly encourage people to reach out to their legislators about how food is manufactured and processed in their states, because that is a hurdle, and it's a hurdle in the beef business, and it's quite frankly a hurdle in a lot of businesses. And I think and quite frankly, what that's caused is it's caused consolidation among the food manufacturing and the processing world. And not to go back to beef, but it's what I know best. There's really four companies in the U.S. right now that do all of the beef processing. And one of them, a lot of press has gone out recently because they've had to shut down because of COVID infections inside their
Right.
plant, and it was Smithfield. And when Smithfield's plant went down, about 20% of the meat processing in the country shut down. It's that significant, And so without those smaller producers without that mid-level of processing plants, the incumbents just can, if something happens like what happened with Smithfield, we could have real supply chain problems, and I still think we might down the road. And it doesn't look like COVID's burning out as quickly as we thought it was going to. So what is the impact of that in the next 2 months, 6 months, and a 1 year? It is still, I think, something that we don't really understand yet. So these restrictions on small producers, I think, have to be addressed, and perhaps COVID will help. Some of these states look at some of these challenges that exist within their states and allow their producers to do what Wyoming's done and open up, for processors to sell more directly.
Yeah,
So,
I was actually going to ask you that because we find that in many different industries, a lot of these barriers and hurdles to progress, and frankly, very manual type of processes. A lot of those digital transformations to automate that have been accelerated as a result. And I wonder,
yeah.
kind of what you're talking about with the processing, if there's technology, whether it be visual technology, IoT technology, AI technology, if there are things that can be done to help either offset the amount of processing that needs to be done or maybe even eliminate it altogether. What do you think?
Well, I think there's not an industry in the world that is not getting touched by technology. When I visit ranchers, they're sitting on their horses and they've got their cell phones,
Right.
and so they're carrying a computer with them. And the way we're building the BeefChain user interface recognizes that you've got a computer and a chip reader in your pocket everywhere you go. So RFID and QR codes and things like that are very easily recognized and used by mobile devices is right now the way to go. And we're finding now that there's development on ear tags that are predominantly RFID right now, which has limitations in range and things like that. We're starting to see tag manufacturers out there working with 5G, and that's going to create whole new benefits for ranchers. It's kind of funny on these big ranches out here in Wyoming. You'll hear ranchers go, "Yeah, I spent 2 days looking for a cow and a calf that wandered off somewhere, and I don't know where they are." When you start adding 5G, and quite honestly, there's companies out there right now that have drones that will fly over your ranch,
Right.
and identify where your animals are. And boy, what time savers. And so in our system, when a vet comes and looks at an animal, they can tap their and I don't have to tap, but they just have to use their cell phone within proximity of that animal, and it pops up the record on that animal, and they can record exactly what they have. Well, that was either not done, in the past, because recording that, what value would that bring?
Right.
But more importantly, it was so laborious that ranchers just wouldn't do it. And even if they did do it, it was a paper process, and would never get to that information would never get to where it needed to be. Well, now, you can scan a package of beef, theoretically in your grocery store, and see all that data. You don't want to give too much data, because too much data I think is also distracting.
Yeah.
But that
Or
data can now be used.
or borderline creepy. We don't want to know the name of the cow, as an example.
We actually joke about that quite a bit. Once you name something, it's a pet. It's no
Yeah.
longer
It's no longer grocery
but
store aisle eligible.
but it's data. It's surprising how data can be used beneficially. It's also surprising how data can be used inappropriately,
Right.
but you know, ranchers can now make real decisions, about about how they operate their ranches, and that could bring them greater value. I'll give you a perfect case in point. This doesn't exist yet, but it's very close. Is right now, the way grading, choice, select and prime is done is actually after the beef is processed. So the processor gets the benefit of that, not the rancher.
Mm.
And so you're when you sell a cow, you theoretically don't know how it's going to grade. And however, if you start collecting data and you start seeing that, this ranch produces more prime than another ranch does, okay, well, that's information that could help that rancher. And more importantly, that rancher could almost go down to, well, this bull and this cow in combination creates more prime. And you can start dealing with, you can do ranch management decisions that before simply didn't exist because of this data. And as a result, you can produce better product. Theoretically, more prime would be better product. And if the rancher can prove that their supply produces a higher percentage of prime, why shouldn't they benefit in that too?
Right.
And that's kind of what we're that's where we want to get the power back to the rancher. And that's the value that information can really provide that historically was simply just lost.
Right.
You sold your animal at the sale barn. From that point on, you had no idea where your product went in the marketplace, how it was graded. And frankly, you didn't care because you didn't benefit from it. But if you're going to get 10, 15, 20 cents more per pound, you're going to make different decisions.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
And I think that's valuable.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And uh like you said, I mean, a lot of these are kind of small mom and pop type of operations. And while the big corporation might not think that that's a big deal, but for these folks, it is very much a big deal. And, having this technology at their disposal further offloads things that they would have to do manually, which means they got more time to either make better quality products or be able to have more volume or inventory. So, I mean, it definitely has a material impact. And so with BeefChain, I get the kind of the track and trace aspect of it. Of
Mhm.
okay, we're collecting the data. It's written to a data storage technology that makes it tamper resistant. It's
Mhm.
transparent and visible to most,
Mhm.
if not everybody. There's probably kind of a built-in kind of firewalling of permissioning that happens to be part of this network type of thing. Um, so outside of kind of a track and trace type of perspective, what other capabilities are you directly creating as part of BeefChain?
Well, um, another challenge that we believe our system can help is the way the ranching community works right now is they essentially get paid at one point in time during the year, and they have to survive on that money until that point in time the next year. It's a very real problem in both ranching and farming. You sell your crop, you've sold your crop,
Right.
and so what ends up happening is ranchers and farmers typically take some sort of a bridge loan, or or some sort of loan that carries them through until the next time that they get revenue and they can pay off the loan. And the challenge exists is they don't control what they can sell their product for at that endpoint. And many times their revenue is less than what their loan amounts are. So they end up, carrying loans year after year after year, and find themselves, significantly in debt.
Right.
One of the real challenges with both ranching and farming is these people tend to be, very land rich, but cash poor because the way it operates, and you don't want to start selling off acreage of your ranch. A problem that we think we can also solve through this new technology is if we can tokenize herds
Mm.
and allow ranchers to be able to sell the tokens, in advance, and deliver their product in the fall against that token, then we may be able to cut out that aspect of the business as well too. And they may they may not have to take out a loan or as significant amount of a loan and leave themselves considerably less exposed. So I think blockchain technology in particular has so many benefits because of what you've listed before: the immutability, the transparency, the distributed nature of it, the encryption, everything that makes blockchain valuable. You can now use that technology to solve other problems besides the track and trace. And you mentioned earlier in a question about AI. Once you apply AI to all of this information as well too, you're going to be able to vastly improve a really outdated system. The system of ranching and selling it to a backender or a feedlot, and then going to a processor, and then a processor to a distributor, et cetera. That system has been in place for over 100 years. How can that system be improved so that, one, our constituents, the ranchers, benefit more. Certainly, our next most important stakeholder would be the consumers. And so how can we use, now that we're collecting all this data, what other problems can this data be used to solve? And that's kind of our mission at BeefChain, is to keep looking at the various problems that ranchers have and see how technology doesn't have to be blockchain, although I'm a huge proponent of it. But how can we solve those problems for our ranchers? Because we believe happy ranchers create happy consumers, because it's it's a better, safer, better tasting product, and that's our goal. So we're constantly looking exactly at what you just asked, which is what's next. Track and trace, we got it. Our USDA certification, we're there, we got it. What's next? And I think every technology company should be looking at that. What do you do next with the technology that you've built? If you don't innovate, you stagnate and you die.
Oh, totally. And so, we've been talking a lot about Wyoming. And so what I want to understand also is, so when we talk about BeefChain, is BeefChain just for Wyoming ranchers and customers, or is this national, international? Kind of what's the scope of BeefChain now and potentially in the future?
It is both national and international. We started out, and because our owners are Wyoming ranchers, we started out there, and they're kind of our home base. But we have worked with the Nebraska Association. We have worked with associations in Texas. A sheep product that we worked on was part of the Canadian Sheep Federation. They're great people up there. And as I mentioned, we've exported product to several countries, and our technology, we are working with companies and governments in other parts of the world that want to use our technology to help them in their countries or among their associations. So really, no, we are not limited to Wyoming. We started in Wyoming really because Wyoming is a fairly unique place in the blockchain world, and it might be it might help the viewers to understand some unique things that Wyoming has done. In the past 3 years, Wyoming has passed about 20 bills around blockchain, distributed finance, and cryptocurrency in particular. And Wyoming has really set itself apart from really any other jurisdiction, arguably in the world, with what Wyoming has done. And and this isn't unique. You know, I know a lot of your viewers may go, Wyoming, why Wyoming? You know, Wyoming is a pretty unique place. You know, Wyoming gave women the right to vote 50 years before anywhere else
Right.
in the U.S. could vote. Wyoming created the whole concept of the LLC in 1974. We are the first state to do that. You know, we are the first state with a woman governor. We are the first state with a female Supreme Court justice. I mean, Wyoming is known for firsts, and this is a state whose ethos is rugged individualism, and so it should be no surprise that when a problem was presented to the Wyoming legislature, and essentially what that problem was it all started when someone relatively well known in the cryptocurrency space, a woman by the name of Caitlin Long, tried to donate Bitcoin to endow a scholarship for female engineers at her alma mater,
Yeah.
University of Wyoming. And at the time, Wyoming had a money transmitter law that was very poorly written. Money transmitter laws are designed for like the Western Union type companies.
Right.
And the law was written around if you deposit money at Western Union, then Western Union has to hold your money in reserve until they deliver it somewhere else. Well, the way the law was written, it captured cryptocurrency companies in a very negative way. And all of the cryptocurrency companies pulled out of Wyoming a number of years ago. And that wasn't the intention of Wyoming's law, but it just captured it. And Caitlin basically said, you know what, I'm going to see if there's a way we can fix this. And she ended up getting in contact with a very innovative legislator at the University of, in Wyoming, named Tyler Lindholm. Tyler is the majority whip, young guy, Navy vet, kind of a libertarian. So he kind of was a cryptocurrency guy, and he went, great, we're gonna run with this bill, and we're gonna fix this limitation so that it would bring the cryptocurrency companies back in. And that was the very first bill that they ran. And if I recall, that passed unanimously in both houses. So it was pretty amazing. But to the credit of Tyler Lindholm and the Wyoming legislature, they said, what more could we do with this? I mean, okay, we fixed that problem, but what more can we do? And over time, a number of us got involved, and something was created called the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition, which is a group of like-minded people that just volunteered their time to work with the legislature to help identify things that the state could do. And to the credit of the state, and to the credit of, at the time, Governor Mead, the governor actually created a standing task force around blockchain, and one of the first states to do that. Yeah. And this task force, which was made up of both legislators and experts, Caitlin was actually named to that committee. They just said, okay, what can we do around this space? Where can we do economic development? Where can we remove hurdles for businesses, like blockchain businesses? Where can we solve problems like, and I experienced this at BeefChain, and I also experienced it in a trade association that I ran in this space as well too, where it was very difficult for me to get a bank account. And I couldn't get the bank account because, the FDIC considered cryptocurrency and digital assets to be kind of an at-risk industry. Although it's completely legal, right? They essentially told member banks of the FDIC, if you bank this industry, we're going to put you under enhanced scrutiny. By the way, if a regulator ever says you're going to be under enhanced scrutiny, it's a bad thing. So, so that's like the IRS saying, yeah, we're just going to do a little enhanced scrutiny of your tax return.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that was another area where the Wyoming legislature went, wait a minute, how do we fix this? And probably the most important thing, in my opinion, that the Wyoming legislators did was created something called special purpose depository institutions, speedy banks. And what's unique about speedy banks is they're designed to bank the crypto industry, both in fiat, but because of the way federal regulation is written, banks are the qualified custodians for holding digital assets in trust, and which has been one of the real hurdles to big institutional investors getting involved in this asset class, because they're required by law to have a third-party custodian. Um, third-party custodians should be banks, what the legislation says, but the FDIC prevented banks from banking this industry. So there was this circular problem
Right.
that really stopped this industry. And Wyoming did something really, really interesting. And credit goes to three people: Caitlin, Tyler Lindholm, I mentioned, and a really smart young lawyer named Chris Land, who was working in the Legislative Services Office at the state of Wyoming, who said, let's really look at this and let's find out how we could fix this problem. And what they came up with is something really kind of brilliant, which is these SPDI banks are chartered banks by the Wyoming Division of Banking. So they are chartered banks. But they put in a requirement where these banks have to hold 100% reserve and can't lend. Well, if you lend and you don't have 100% reserve, that would be fractional reserve banking, as you know. Then whenever you do fractional reserve banking, you put your depositors at some risk and you need FDIC insurance.
Yep.
So what Wyoming came up with is, hey, we found a way where we can create a bank, okay, and that bank doesn't have to have FDIC insurance. It can, but there's challenges there. And so they threaded the needle of regulation and created these new institutions. Now, Wyoming was out there for the last 2 years doing this, and every other state, in particular New York's NYDFS, said, you guys are crazy, you can't do this. No. And then about 2 weeks ago, a very interesting announcement came out from the OCC. That's the Office of the Controller, and they're the regulatory body for national banks.
Right.
And they came out and they said, national banks can now custody cryptocurrency. Now, it's not going to play out exactly the way people think it is, because saying it and getting all the regulatory stuff in place and the rules and all that will take time. But essentially, what the U.S. government or a branch of the U.S. government just did is said, you know what, Wyoming? You're right. and
you're right again, right?
Yeah, well, yes. Now, it's good news, bad news for Wyoming. It's certainly, validated everything that, we've been doing for the last couple of years. But it also opened the door for national banks. And we were kind of hoping that Wyoming would have its own little industry. A great example would be what South Dakota did in the early 80s when they changed their usury law, specifically to attract credit card processing. Right now, most credit card processing happens in South Dakota. And last I heard, I think there's about 16,000 jobs in South Dakota, particularly around that industry. We were hoping to do that in Wyoming. And I still think that's going to be the case, because just saying you can do this, is one thing. Having all the laws and UCC mapping and the regulatory structure, all of that, Wyoming did all that. And the federal government's now, or the OCC, is going to have to do all that too. And that's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
And so I do think that it's a threat to Wyoming, but we've also got a 2-year head start. And I think if these Wyoming banks get up and running quickly. There's two of them right now that are going through the regulatory process. Once they get up and running, I think Wyoming is still going to have a huge advantage over any other bank, and but that needs to be seen. But again, you know, Wyoming was right. you know,
Yeah,
it's
it,
it's good that women vote. Okay, we
yeah.
were right.
They're only over half of the population. It just makes sense.
Yeah,
But
I gotta tell you, it's actually a fascinating story. If you allow me to take a little
yeah, let's
divergence,
digress a little bit.
um, Wyoming wanted to become a state, but it didn't have enough people. At that point in time, you needed to have. Don't hold me to this number. You had to have 50,000 residents to be a state or something like that. So Wyoming, being creative, said, "Well, let's give women the right to vote, and we'll hit that number." And so Congress obviously sent out a delegation to negotiate with the then territory to become a state. And I'm cutting out a lot of the details, but to make the long story short, the delegation said, and this was in the 1860s, said, well, listen, we'll make you a state, but when you do that, you're going to have to take away the right of women to vote. And Wyoming said, you know what? On second thought, we don't want to be a state. And didn't become a state until 1896. So
Wow.
they stuck to their guns, and I can't remember the time period. It certainly was over 25 or 30 years went by where they said, no, we're not gonna give that up. And ultimately, Wyoming was admitted as a state and maintained the right to vote for women 20 years before the rest of the country did. And so, again, it's that rugged individualism. It's that Wyoming ethos of saying, you know what? No, we're not going to change the way we do it just to become a state. We'll, thanks, but no thanks. And
Yeah.
so that's exactly the spirit that allows the innovation like what happened around blockchain to happen. I cannot give enough credit to the Wyoming legislature. Quite honestly, two governors have now supported this, and the university, which I'd like to take a minute and talk about. The university is jumping on board with both feet into this industry as well too, and you know that's that's what makes Wyoming unique. Is they just get things done, and it's the way the legislature is set up. Wyoming legislators are not professional politicians. They are limited by the Constitution how many times they can meet.
Yeah.
They're paid a per diem for when they're in session, and believe me, in many cases, it doesn't cover the cost of a hotel room to come down to the Capitol. And so these people all, after the session is done, go back to their full-time jobs. And I think that's another thing that makes Wyoming unique is we don't have a ruling class of legislators who their only job is to get reelected. These people serve because they want to give back to their communities. And you see that in the way they create their legislation. And it's, being from the East Coast, it's fascinating to watch how different Wyoming does it than so many other places. To some extent, people ask me, would I help another state do this? I don't know if another state could do this.
Yeah.
It's a perfect storm of situations that I don't think exists anywhere else. And so that's
I was
where
just
we are where we are.
I love that you said that because, I was kind of segueing into that a little bit. That, in a lot of ways, Wyoming has preserved that original American dream, and has been protected and isolated to a certain extent, and is able to carry forward those ideals that are just so innovative. And it's refreshing to hear that, especially from a political perspective, and definitely don't want to get into politics at all,
Hmm.
because I'm sure it'll offend a lot of people. But
Well, let me just interject and say this: the blockchain bills in Wyoming were entirely bipartisan.
yeah.
That was something else that was really unique. Is both sides agreed. Wow.
And the funny thing is I've had the opportunity to work with both Democrats and Republicans on reviewing bills, in Washington D.C. And it is funny that on that particular topic, folks tend to get along and agree. Where you're
Mhm.
thinking, well, this is a fairly complex topic, and you don't really fully understand the tech, but you guys are all on board. You guys get it, so I'm not going to argue with that. But there's a lot to unpack on what you talked about, Stephen. And one thing that I definitely want to highlight that I think is often overlooked as people start to embark on these blockchain initiatives is they often overlook the legal structure, the formation period around these essentially ecosystems that you're creating, and where you form this entity is so vital to its success and what you can and can't do. And so oftentimes people want to jump straight to the technology. They want to say, okay, this is what the technology can and can't do.
Right.
But they forget, what can you actually do by law? And if I was thinking about
Great point.
a traditional business, Delaware of all places is a very popular place to establish, or Nevada. And then likewise for blockchain, there's hotspots like Wyoming that provide more flexibility to be able to do things. And so I just want to just emphasize that again, that when you're thinking about going down this blockchain path, make sure you engage with your legal folks, your business folks, to really, really concentrate on the regulatory aspects, the formation
Mhm.
aspects, because that can be a make or break moment for you, depending on what you're trying to do. Am I quote unquote off the reservation here, or am I in
No,
lockstep with how you're thinking?
not at all. No,
Okay.
listen, before I got in this space, I've spent my career working in large companies and starting businesses and running businesses. And you're absolutely right. I know the a lot of my Bitcoin and my cryptocurrency brethren out there are going, oh, regulation is bad. In a perfect world, there'd be no regulation, there'd be no banks. We would all have this peer-to-peer system. The reality of the situation is that's not going to happen anytime in the near future.
Yeah.
And an individual who I really respect in the cryptocurrency world, named Trace Mayer, many of your viewers may know him.
Yep.
Once said to me a great phrase, which was, technology needs to be backwardly compatible to the law too. You need to it's great if you build something, but if it's illegal, I'm sorry, that's a problem. And now I'm going to do another little plug for Wyoming. The way the Wyoming laws are built, and by the way, one of the bills that was passed was a fintech sandbox that will allow companies to experiment with some new concepts. And I'm oversimplifying it, but as long as you're not trying to rip somebody off and you continue to keep the Wyoming Secretary of State's office informed of what you're doing, they're going to give you a little bit of regulatory leeway to experiment and allow your business to grow and develop. And there's the Wyoming Secretary of State's office. I've worked extensively with them, and they're terrific people. You can pick up the phone and call them, and they'll actually talk with you. That's another nice thing about Wyoming. The governor will probably be upset with me for saying this, but you can kind of walk into the Capitol. You don't have to go through metal detectors, and you can walk around the Capitol, and you can visit some of these offices. A lot easier than when I lived in New York City.
Right.
And so these agencies here in Wyoming recognize that they're here to help you. And so if you do have an interesting concept, I would absolutely follow your advice, Mike. Talk to your legal counsel. Always talk to your legal counsel. And
Despite popular
but
belief, they are your friend. Despite popular belief.
yep. Yep, the ones that you pay are your friends, absolutely.
Yeah.
And but but the way the Wyoming laws are written, if you have a nexus to Wyoming, then you benefit from this legislation. So in this distributed world we live in, if you domicile your company in Wyoming, you may be living in Austin, you may be living in Cincinnati, you may be living anywhere. You can domicile your company in Wyoming and take advantage of all of these bills that we passed, and because you've got that nexus, and so I would encourage people who are starting businesses, or are concerned that their current regulatory environment may not allow them to be able to expand their concept or grow their concepts. I would encourage you through your legal counsel to reach out to the state of Wyoming. And by the way, there's a number of very talented attorneys in Wyoming as well too, who, because of this, have really learned this space. And quite honestly, there's accounting firms now that know this space because of what we've done, and they are certainly willing to offer advice and guidance on whether it makes sense for you to have an access to Wyoming, and whether that would benefit you or not. But I absolutely encourage you to certainly do that.
Yeah.
Look, I in the course I teach, as much as I'm a huge blockchain proponent, you know, you don't go out and you build a blockchain company. What you do is you go out and you solve a problem. And if that problem involves blockchain in the solution, terrific. But you can't do it the other way around. I think that's the same way with regulation. You know what? You need to make sure what you're doing is legal and compliant, and you cross your T's and you dot your I's. Yes, I know that in a perfect libertarian world that wouldn't exist, but that's not the world we live in.
Yeah, people
And
have imaginations and they like to kind of think through that. And it's very similar. I had this conversation with another cryptocurrency person that I really respect. She's just insanely smart. Um, but we kind of got down this rabbit hole of kind of this ideal world and how it should be. And I just had to say, I'm gonna stop you there. The word should. Um, you
Mhm.
know, Whenever we have these types of conversations, should really shouldn't be in the conversation, because at the end of the day, there are very hard restrictions. There is physics for government. There's physics for the business world, that there are these immovable objects, and outside of a catastrophic event, the government completely dissolves. Whatever it may be, it's the Walking Dead becomes true. Outside of those very, very unlikely events, capitalism isn't going anywhere. And so we can talk
Mhm.
all darn day long about disintermediation and crypto and, all the great things that it'll open up, maybe 50, maybe 100 years from now. But today, in the short term, these are institutions that have been put in place for, I would say, very good reasons, even though they may be archaic now and we may have outgrown some of those controls. But those laws and regulations were put in place for a reason. They weren't just, someone just didn't
Mhm.
say, tomorrow I got a punch list. I got to make sure I get these in. But they were built for a reason. Now, the challenge with our system is we're great at creating laws, but we're not so great at retiring laws, and actually actively going through and saying, okay, here's the list. What do I scratch off? Wouldn't it be great if we had a process in our legislative system where every year you had to do a law audit, and you go down the list and you see silly laws like if you spit in public you go to jail, or all these kind of crazy laws that you hear about. And so kind of I'm digressing a little bit, but I think it's an important point, which is it's all coming back to ground yourself in the current reality. Yes, think about future vision, where things could go. Do scenario planning. Say, okay, if scenario A comes true in the next 5 years, here's how we'll handle that. Scenario B, scenario C, scenario D. However, the problem is that, one, we don't know what the future is going to be, but two, we work within a current system, and there is some level of predictability of that system. Laws don't happen overnight. So don't think that you
Mhm.
can move to this utopia, very quickly. So I guess I'm building on your point there around your conversation that,
Yeah.
you know, ground yourself in reality. These technologies, especially things like blockchain, they open up the imagination, and they really fundamentally challenge some key constructs that we have built to protect us. We've created brokers and intermediaries for a reason. They were to protect us
Mhm.
and to help. It's just like the processors for the food industry. They're there for a reason. Now we may have outgrown them because of technology or what have you, but they're there for a
Mhm.
reason. So um I think that having that kind of practical reality is really important to ground us. And to your other point, that I think is critically important, is yes, blockchain's cool, blockchain's sexy. There's a lot of hype. People want to hear about it,
Mhm.
but kind of how I think about it whenever I'm having these conversations with customers is use blockchain as kind of the opening. Hey, yes, blockchain's cool. It allows you to do these sorts of things. Okay, now let's quickly pivot. What problems are we trying to solve? And we can
Right.
map all those great capabilities that blockchain can provide, but then let's make sure we do it in the context of real things that are real problems. And it's a really great way to look at your existing strategy and say, okay, let's do a heat map on where having something tamper resistant is really helpful within our current capabilities. Let's do a mapping of where mastering data, because one of the benefits of blockchain that people don't talk a whole lot about is master data management. I look at blockchain as a great master data management system, with a fraction of the cost of an MDM type of solution.
Mhm.
But where does that help? Where do we need to build more trust? Where do we need to build peer to peer data exchange? And you look at your current
Mhm.
strategy and go, oh, okay, now I can kind of see how this applies. And that will resonate with your business partners. Go, okay, yeah. So now
Mhm.
I know what business area. Now I can start doing ROI calculations. I can start, okay, if I did this, what would that mean to my transactions? Oh, you're telling me that this reconciliation process that required 5 people and 2 months of man effort to do every year, that is around $50 million that it's costing me to operate this, you can cut that to 100K a year. Sold. Then it's a straightforward conversation, but also it's a great way to, as a template, to look at both challenging current strategies and saying, why the hell are we doing this anymore? This is silly.
Mhm.
uh, to also, hey, this opens up a whole new business model, a whole new set of capabilities that we can embark upon as a business. And so you had mentioned, you do some work at the University of Wyoming. Maybe tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about that work and how some of these concepts kind of interweave in the work that you're doing there.
Sure. Well, another area, again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, where Wyoming is unique, is we only have one state university. That's it. The University of Wyoming is the state university, and we have a wonderful um, um, group of 7 community colleges that feed into the University of Wyoming. So, University of Wyoming is in a unique place. It's a land grant school, so there's certain things around land grant schools everywhere that's unique to land grant. But when you're the only one, it creates unique opportunities. And one of the unique opportunities is the university takes a much larger role than many in the economic development of the state.
Mm.
And so the university has seen what's going on with these blockchain bills, and said, you know what, we have created something unique and different. We don't want to have the same thing happen with the LLC law, where we created a great idea and then Delaware, to their credit, jumped on it, and now most LLCs are created in Delaware. I think Wyoming is number 3 still, which is great for a small state, but still, we were the leader of something, and we kind of let it get away from us. So we've got this unique new, pardon the expression, we've got this unique new toy. What do we do with it?
Right.
And so the university recognizes that um, almost every college within our university can get touched by blockchain. We've got a very strong ag school. Well, I mean, I'm president of BeefChain. I can certainly give you the agriculture strong points of it. Certainly, our business school and finance. I mean, distributed finance and fintech is changing, almost by the day.
Yep.
So, the University of Wyoming has an excellent law school. So, there's a real need for lawyers that understand this asset class, and so the law school sees a real unique opportunity there. We've got a power and energy school. Well, tokenization of environmental credits and CO2 sequestration. And so, as you look through a university like Wyoming's, almost every college has an application, a very real application that blockchain could benefit. And to the credit of the university, they've said, what we need to do is, most colleges, in most universities, even University of Wyoming, each college is kind of its own little entity that, yes, kind of reports up to their version of Old Main, but they kind of work independently. What can Wyoming do differently? And the thought there is, why don't we pool all of our resources and create an interdisciplinary center that works with all of the different colleges within the university and helps them create programs where we could share resources. And the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a minor program. And that minor program initially will involve three of the colleges, the College of Business, the College of Ag, and the Engineering and Information Systems, college. And we're going to share resources. I mean, when you think about it, a fundamentals 1 and a fundamentals 2 class, why do three different colleges have to have those same classes? Why don't we just pool our resources and do that? And and our law school is looking at doing a JD MBA with a concentration in blockchain. And so that's where we're going to go first is helping the colleges create those programs, because I say this quite a bit, and Wyoming's biggest export is its college educated youth. You graduate from the University of Wyoming. If you're not going into ranching, you're not going into power and energy, you're probably going to leave the state and get a job somewhere else. How do we stop that?
Right.
So we look at this as one, this is an industry that can bring economic development to the state, and the university wants to be a part of that. We see that there is a shortage of people that understand. You work in this industry. It's hard to find people that already know, especially young people who already know a lot about this industry. The first thing you really have to generally do is teach them about this industry, unless they're programmers.
Right.
So how do we fix that? How do we train lawyers that can really go out there and advise properly in this asset class, and accountants that can advise properly in this asset class? So that's part of the mandate. We also believe that universities are where the research for industry should be done, and there's a number of universities that have truly uniquely set themselves apart. One of them is University of Arkansas, who's really gone after the supply chain aspect of this. And it makes sense in Arkansas because of the big supply chain people that are there. I mean, it's Walmart, it's JB Hunt, it's all of these amazing companies that this technology is going to revolutionize. So the University of Arkansas has really done something special with an applied program that, quite frankly, I want to, as much as I can, shamelessly steal with their permission, and because they've done something truly unique and different. And so I think research is a great opportunity for us as well too. And
yeah, you and I
so,
both can selfishly plug the University of Arkansas's blockchain COE, being full disclosure, being on the
yep.
board of that one. But you're right. I mean, the best invention of humanity, in my opinion, has been copy paste. If it works, replicate it. I mean, It just makes
Yeah.
sense. And, you know,
And
given
to
the
the
type
credit
of
of the
opportunities you
University of
guys have.
Arkansas too.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the credit of the University of Arkansas, they've said, how can I help you? What do you need? You know, we want to work with you. You know, we want to share faculty. We want to share white papers. We want to share because, you know, the whole ethos of the distributed technology exists in everything. Both Arkansas and Wyoming can benefit from us sharing this information. You know, we are entering an open source world where everyone participates to make the product better, and that should apply to things like setting up centers of excellence. So, to the credit of University of Arkansas, and a wonderful director you have there, Mary Lassity, she has basically said to the University of Wyoming, we want to help you. We want you to be successful because I think we'll all benefit from that. And that I think is that's the way the world is going. And you talk to Bitcoin, core developer. It's all about building on the existing code. How do we
Right.
how do we all work together to make the base product better? And if there's anything that's really truly important in this open source ethos, it's really that everyone working to make things better, not necessarily individual competition trying to keep trade secrets and things like that. I think this industry is fairly unique in that way. Oh, make no mistakes, you need to patent things. When I teach marketing courses, I'm a firm believer in don't attack somebody else's fortified hill.
Right.
Build your own hill and fortify your hill. And in business, how do you fortify your hill? Well, that's patents. That's
Yep. Protect your IP.
to your point earlier, we still live in a world where that stuff matters.
Yeah.
Um, but this open source ethos, I think, is truly an important development along with blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And so the University of Wyoming will hopefully soon be making a very large announcement that we're going to be standing up a center. And setting things up in universities is not like business. You got to cross a lot of T's and dot a lot of I's, we're pretty much there. And we want businesses to come to us and say, how can we work together? What can Wyoming and the university do to help me be successful? And that's exactly the role we want to take. We want to get you in touch with the right people. We want you to work with lawyers that can help you and accountants that can help you. And we can facilitate you meeting with the Secretary of State's office or the Division of Banking, or quite honestly, we've got a pretty unique way that we deal with our state educational system as well too, through a statewide superintendent. So there's the university can help businesses navigate not knowing who to go to, and we believe it's our role to help short circuit that, so that you can get up and running more quickly.
Yeah.
It's a state that values privacy. I think that's important for businesses, especially startups that want to kind of keep what they're doing kind of quiet while they're developing it. And our LLC laws are written around that. In fact, if you use a registered agent, you don't even have to disclose who the executives of a company are when you set up an LLC. So you can work on these new businesses and not necessarily tip off your competitors that you're doing something unique and different. And we want innovation to come to Wyoming. And I think when you combine regulatory agencies, the state legislature, and the university all together into one goal, that's a pretty powerful force, and that's what we hope to accomplish in the state. And so we encourage businesses to reach out. You can reach out directly to me at the university, and I'll point you in the right direction of who you can deal with, whether it's within the university or outside. And we welcome opportunities to work directly with you. We have a blockchain lab, and the blockchain lab is developed to be kind of an incubator of concepts. And we want companies to come to us with a white paper and say, we've got a great idea, help us build this. And we can do that through our blockchain lab. So I think we've got some unique unique attributes that we hope attract like-minded people who want to innovate, who understand what a light touch in regulation means, because that's kind of what Wyoming is about.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that's why the university, to its credit, is saying we need to be a central point for this new asset and this new asset class and this new philosophy. And so we encourage you, give us a call.
All right. So we're putting,
always be cautious when somebody from the government says we're here to help. But
yeah. So we're going to put the 1-800 number down here below. Call today. No, but we covered a lot of ground today, and it's pretty clear that we could talk for the next 2 or 3 hours about all this. But I think covering and what's unique and special about this episode, I think, is we really dug deep into a lot of the business application and a lot of the essentially why are we using blockchain for this very specific set of problems, and how is it going to materially help people. And I think that's something that oftentimes we don't talk enough about. And so going deeper on that I think is really unique. And thank you, Stephen, for sharing a lot of these really frankly meaty, applicable real world stories that kind of illustrate why this is so important and timely that we do this, but also highlighting some very realistic guardrails that all of us have whenever we're establishing a business or creating a new product or service, is that we have to think about the regulatory side. We have to think about the legal formation side of the house. It's just it's a hard barrier to entry, and so making sure that we are aware of that and we're constantly thinking that if we're going down that path when we're building out our strategies, that's just so critical. But also how Wyoming is just so inclusive, and a lot of the history. I didn't know. I knew about the voting thing, but I didn't realize that there was that order, and didn't decide to join the U.S. and all that great stuff. That was super fascinating. But if you would allow me, I would love to take a cut at your mission statement. And I think really your mission statement for BeefChain should be, our goal is to put the mystery meat on the endangered species list. I think that should be your tagline. But
I'll if you allow me to end with one joke, because there's a real big push right now for plant-based hamburger and patties and things like that. And I remember having a meeting with one of our ranchers and talking about whether this is a threat. And he looked at me and says, "You know what, Steve? My cows have been turning vegetables into beef for 8 generations." So
we got this
you
licked.
know what? It's I don't think beef is going away anytime soon.
No.
So listen, it was a real delight, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about BeefChain and the state of Wyoming. It's my adoptive home, but I've just absolutely fallen in love with it. And quite frankly, the university, which has not only embraced me but embraced this whole technology. This is a truly unique and special place. And if you're setting up a new business or looking to set up a division that's going to be experimenting in this space, I think it behooves you to at least kick the tires in Wyoming. So that's my final commercial for the state of Wyoming.
Your final plug. No, but I think it's a legitimate one. I think everyone needs to hear it. And so, like always, we're gonna provide a ton of links, and I'm gonna ask you, Stephen, for a ton of material on some of this new
Happy
COE
to help any
stuff.
way I can.
We'll put it with this episode so people can see it. But last and final question for you, Stephen. Um, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Look, you could reach me at my probably the best way is connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Steve Lupien. You'll see me at the University of Wyoming and BeefChain. So connect with me on LinkedIn. You can reach me at slupien at UWYO University of Wyoming .edu, or you could reach me at Steve at beefchain.io, and reach out to me. If I can help, I'm happy to. If I can point you in the right direction, I'll be happy to do that. And and if I could help anybody navigate and make their lives a little bit easier in this space, I'm delighted to do that.
Awesome,
So, and I
phenomenal.
want to thank you for giving me this platform, and it was a truly delightful doing this interview, and I appreciate what you're doing, and do want to thank you for what you do with the University of Arkansas as well too. And the space needs people to step up and take leadership roles. So I appreciate what you've done.
And listen, Stephen, anytime you want to come back, you're more than welcome. So I'm looking forward to having more of these with you.
Be careful what you ask for.
All right. So with
It's been
that,
a real pleasure.
thank you so much.
All right.